If you're watching this video on the Nest YouTube channel, there's more information and useful links in the description below.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elaine Lawther. I am a project manager at NHS Education. Used to be an accountant, worked in a number of different health boards. Loved numbers, but actually a number of years ago discovered that actually I love people as well, and I moved into project management. So I'm really pleased to be here with you today in our hello, fellow Elaine. We always have to have at least two, never mind your 5 Lorraine Scotts across NHS. There's loads of Elaines as well. Pleased to have you back with me, Elaine. Yeah, I was saying I'm really, really delighted. One of the projects I work with here at NES is the support workforce. I've been in the service for about 31 years. And I'm just really interested in how we make learning a real thing and something we do all the time. That isn't something that, you know, we do once a year in advance of any kind of formal review. So I'm here to talk to you about people management. And my theme, the way I would describe it, is a very quick guide, because you can't go through much in 30 minutes, a very quick guide to working safely with humans. So as I said earlier, one of the things I would strongly recommend you to do is to imagine a real person. Imagine a real person, whether that's your manager, a colleague, somebody you manage or supervise. It can be a work person, but if you're not in a people management role yet, or you're not in a team where somebody's coming to mind, doesn't matter. People tend to be people wherever they are. So it might be in a social club or a sports club. Just think of a real life person. And as we go through the presentation, when I'm posing some questions, I'm hoping that you can take those questions and apply them to that individual. So you also might want to grab a piece of paper and a pen, or if you're handier with the screen, get ready to type something up. So that's the key thing for you guys just now. As I said, I'm not going to ask you to feedback. I'm not going to ask you to disclose anything about anybody, but I'm going to try and make this as open and participative as possible. So we're going to talk about people management. So really interested about what brought you all to this session today. But you know what? Every time we put something on, whether that's any organisation, the minute you put people management on, people jump in and want to attend, because people are really difficult. People are complicated. People are quite hard to get your head round. So what is it about people that is so interesting and difficult, shall we say? So I'd like you to just pop in the chat. And again, I'm not going to come back and ask, we're not going to follow up on any of this. I just want you to put into the chat, and Nick, I'm going to ask you to start us off here. Single words in the chat or phrases that you would use to describe the people you work alongside. So the good stuff, the bad stuff, what words would we use to describe people? You have been all terribly polite. Now, surely somebody must work with somebody who's a bit, yeah, oh yes, thank you, I've got a fussy person there, fab. But if you think about it, it's like that. Everybody's so different. We've got loads of positives and loads of negatives. And these are people that we spend a huge amount of time with. You know, if you think about whether you work, 16 hours a week or 37 hours a week, this is an awful lot of time you spend. And thank you for everybody for being quite so open and honest about all the different ways that you would describe people. And, a lot of those words that you've used, including overpowering, is probably words that I know that colleagues have used to describe me. So, we're talking about real life human beings here, aren't we? So again, going into the chat, when we're thinking about those people, how did these people make us feel? being with people, how does it make us feel? Slightly harder question to answer, because I'm asking you to reflect back on yourself. How do people make you feel? Yeah. And yeah, again, if you think about the interactions we have on a day-to-day basis, we interact with clients and patients and carers and our families, and we interact with our computers and our phones and our kit at work and our physical space. Nothing is quite as complicated as people. Human beings, really, really, really tricky environment to be working alongside. And, I guess this is what we're trying to do today. We're trying to sit and think, given all this complexity, given all this emotion and all these feelings, how do we actually work with that? How do we work in that space? So here's a lovely wee thing that I said, and every one of us, I guess what I like about this is saying that you can hold these feelings about the same person. Whether it's a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever time of the month it is or whatever mood you're in, or actually just at any time, you can have all these feelings about one person. And then within a team, where you're probably going to have all these emotions and these feelings for people. The vast majority of us in the health and care environment work alongside people. Very, very few roles are we completely autonomous and completely involved just for ourselves. So getting away from that feeling awkward around people is really, really mission critical, I think, for us. So you'll very often hear, I'm imagining a lot of you've come in here today because you either you're being managed, or you're a supervisor, or you're a mentor, or you're a coach, or you're a manager or a leader in some form. And you're really trying to be at your best self in that role in managing people. And I'm hoping you've already worked out that managing people is a very strong phrase. We use that word manager, people management. So we're going to unpick that a little bit and say, well, what does management actually mean when we're talking about these amazingly diverse, colourful, beautifully frustrating human beings? And for those of you, if you have any problems with your Wi-Fi, the only thing you need to know is that the key to all of this is slowing down to speed up. So if you take nothing else away from what I'm saying, if you remember that phrase, whenever you're feeling under pressure, very often the best thing to do is to slow down to allow yourself to speak up, to speed up. So for those of you who looked at the way I described this course, I used the little phrase because this is what jumps into my mind when I think about slowing down. So hands up, do quick hands up, everybody who knows who that is and who's old enough to remember that person. Yes, oh thank goodness. Thank goodness, thanks for the thumbs up, yeah. So this is the Green Cross Code, man. If you're slightly younger than early 50s, you might remember the Tufty Club. But if you remember that people thought it was sensible at some point to teach people how to be more careful in a workspace. And one of the things I'm going to try and do is to facilitate a conversation of how you keep safe when working with people. So we're going to use the same phrases that Mr. Green Cross Code used. And I'm wondering how many of you can remember his catchphrase that he had. Whether it was Green Cross Code or Tufty, it's probably exactly the same for anybody who's got a child at the moment. Yes, exactly, Alison. Stop, look, and listen. So very often you'll find in the workplace, whether you're talking about technical things or anything, physical things, but especially in the human sphere, when you're talking about working with another person, whether they are somebody you're caring for, or somebody you're working alongside as a colleague, or your supervisor, or you're the manager. Those three simple words, stop, look, and listen, will get you an awful lot of thinking time and an awful lot of benefit, being able to keep that message key in your mind. Stop, look, and listen. So what does this actually mean when we're thinking about people? Okay, so we're going to explore, what does it mean to stop? What does it mean to look? And what does it mean to listen? How can we actually do that? How can we go from just hearing these words to knowing what to do? Now, I'm going to share some models with you. And for some of you, you may have come across them before, but for some of you, they may be brand new. There will be information on our resource hub and there'll be some information to share, but your good friend Google or DuckDuckGo or any kind of search engine, some of the phrases I'm going to use, if you pop them in, you'll be able to find lots of other resources that talk about these models in more detail. The key thing today is just to give you a little introduction. So the first one we're going to look at is something called the ladder of inference, which is a fancy term for what happens in everyday life. So it's a way of describing what you and I do as human beings all the time, constantly. We do this. So what this is saying, if you think about the bottom of the ladder, you start at observe and you're going to move up all the way up to the top, one step at a time. So we'll be in an environment and we'll see something, but we'll see what we want to see. We won't see every single thing because as a human being, that's pretty impossible. So we'll come into a setting, maybe an office, a clinic, a department meeting, and we'll observe something, we'll notice something, and we'll select what it is that we want to hold on to. And before we know it, we'll have created some meaning in that. We'll have made some assumptions about what that means. So we're seeing somebody's behaviour and we're starting to go up this ladder because actually this is what most human beings do. It's what allows us to think and act really, really, really quickly. So we go from seeing something, we try and create a meaning out of it, and that helps us make a decision. It helps us decide, based on our beliefs, what to do. So we go from seeing something to action really, really quickly. So some of you may have come across this before. For some of you, this might be brand new. The key thing you need to remember is this is what we do all the time. If you meet somebody, I want you to imagine, I want you to think about that person that you brought to mind and think about the last time you saw them. You would have thought about that person, what they were wearing, how they speak, how they're dressed, all of these different things. And you'll have gone up all your ladder all the way through. It's very human. There's nothing judgmental in this, but it's really, really risky. How many of us, and we do not need to show hands because I don't think there's anybody on this call today who has not made a judgment about somebody based on what you've observed and realised actually it's not all the truth. It's not the truth and the whole truth. So we know this ladder's there, but the first key message is stop. Just know it is there. What are we choosing to look at? What meanings are we putting onto that? What assumptions are we holding on to? So for anybody who was at the session this morning with John Lawther, I'm going to share my ladder. I came from a working class environment, very much like John. And when I hear somebody like John speak, I observe and I hear his accent, I hear his use of language, I hear the way he dresses, the way he moves, and I put meaning on that. John's a good guy, love him. I assume I can trust him. I assume I can believe what he's saying. That means I'm going to listen in. And, you know, I think about the same things and care about the same things as John, so I'm going to take action. If John wants me to do something, I'm going to do it. Now, I'm not saying that's not true. John might be a fantastic guy. I think he is. But again, think about over the next couple of days, maybe. Think about when you go into an environment and you start up and down this ladder. So think about there is a ladder. We cannot move away from it. It is there. But first thing we need to do is we need to stop and know that it's there. So the second action is to look. So we sit and imagine. So again, think about these real people you were talking about and these real teams that you were thinking about. And we're thinking about how do we look much more clearly about what it is we're seeing. So the next model I want to introduce you to is called Cartman's drama triangle. And again, you might have seen this and you might not. So John Lawther was the guy who did our keynote presentation this morning. If you haven't heard him, I would definitely recommend you listen to the recording as soon as that becomes available. It's really, really engaging and really, really important link about how important you guys are in the workplace and the importance of learning. So when I refer to John, I'm referring to John Lawton. So we've stopped, we're now looking. We're looking at an environment and we're seeing what is going on. So this guy, researcher Cartman, said, actually, we can describe this thing called the drama triangle. So if you take any kind of environment where there's more than one or two people, every time you look at something, you might sit and see this thing called the drama triangle. So if there's any grit, if people are disagreeing with each other, if there's arguments, what you might find is we're playing out these three different roles. Imagine in a workspace, somebody says something a bit nippy to you. So you're feeling that you've been victimised, you've been picked on. So you go to a colleague and you say, oh, see that bism, see that Nick Frew, he's a right bism. He gave me some really bad feedback last week and that was really unfair. He's not nice, is he? And that person, depending on how they are, might go, I know, he's a right bism. Right, what can we do? We'll get our own back on him. And so then you bring in a persecuting position. I know, Nick, I'm only using you because that could never possibly be true. So I need you to imagine a scenario, and it might be better when you're going forward during the week. Think about a situation where things are not going well. Who's playing the victim? Who's playing the rescuer? And who's persecuting? Again, if you think about a management situation or sometimes when you're supervising somebody, which of these roles are you taking on? Do you very often start as the victim? Are you the persecutor? Are you rescuer? Now, these are really strong words. Again, there's no judgment. These are things people do to allow ourselves to deal with all the human stuff that's going on. It allows us to actually keep our heads above water. But it means you can very often get stuck in a situation, and before you know it, the drama has become the thing. If anybody's not getting this, if you're in a family situation, if you live with friends or family members or in any kind of community, it's sometimes very easy to spot the drama triangle in the home setting. If you're not seeing it in work, think about how you see it at home. So we've stopped, we're recognising there's a ladder, we've looked and we're looking around and seeing what is actually going on. Who's doing what? Or, what's happening in that space? What do we think is going on? So again, what you're trying to do is slow everything down. So you've stopped, you've looked, and then you're now going to listen. Now, none of this will be new to any one of you. You'll have all have heard of this before. You'll all have heard of the importance of understanding what is going on. But one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you about this today is we totally recognise the working environment that but especially you guys, find yourself working in. And when things are stressful and we're working at pace, and very often, for many of us, we're working on screens, that human nature stuff about being able to slow down and have good conversation and listen has been getting harder and harder and harder. So we almost need a wee reminder to slow everything down and not jump, because there's very little space in your working day. If you're in a clinic setting or in a GP's practice or in an office or in wherever we are, you all would quite sure would be telling me that very often there's not a single moment to think about what is going on. So the offer here is, when you're working with people, we somehow need to remind ourselves that it is actually as simple as stop, look, and listen. And when we're listening to understand. We're listening to really respect that person. There was loads of positive words that you used, so I can imagine you doing this naturally at the best of times. But when we're stressed and we're not always in the best of times, then actually we need a wee bit of a reminder of ourselves to go, right, I'm listening to understand. And until I understand, I won't act. And it has to be in that order. There's so much pressure on us as busy health and social care workers to act, to be doing stuff, because we know there's such great need. So the challenge here is about stop, look, and listen. Slow yourself down enough that you can see what is actually going on, and trusting that 99 times out of 100, if you give yourself that chance to slow it down and to understand what assumptions you're making, what's actually happening in the scenario. Is somebody blaming somebody else? Are people getting really stressed out and argumentative? 99 times out of 100, if you give yourself a chance to slow down, you'll start seeing some of the complexity and you will do the right thing. You're all working in health and care. We are all working in healthcare because we're good people who care about other people. So we need to slow ourselves down to make sure that the best of ourselves comes back up to the surface. Now, I know that's not always the case in every environment. I have worked in environments that have not had much listening in them, who've not had much understanding in them, and they've been very, very difficult places to be. I'm sure every one of us would have experienced some really great working environments with people and some less wonderful working environments with people. But my key offer for you here is that simple message: stop, look, and listen. Give yourself that chance to slow down. Yes, there's models and frameworks that can help, but it very much is about using our senses, really listening, taking the time to understand as best we can what assumptions we might be making, what might actually be going on in front of us, and what patterns of behaviour we might be stuck in, and then to act. Now, what I would say is, if you find yourself in a situation where, you know, for your own sense, you're thinking, there's something not quite right here, I'm not quite able to understand what's going on, I would strongly encourage you to speak to a colleague, your own manager, your local learning and development departments, or maybe even start thinking about taking on a mentor or a coach to help you with some of this. People are really difficult. We are complicated people. I'm a complex person. You're a complex person. So treat people management with the same kind of investment and respect as we would if we were dealing with a really high-tech piece of kit. We need to take that time, because ultimately, I'm just going to leave you with this message by Mr. President Eisenhower. And we talk about that leadership and management, you know, as being separate things. But when it comes to people, working alongside other people is both a great honour, but a great challenge. It's really, really difficult to keep all this in your head. But if you slow yourself down, stop, look and listen, think of the Green Cross Code Man, it will give you a chance to be your best self and be your best form of manager, your best form of colleague, and your best form of participant. On that note, I'd just like to say thank you for coming. I know that's been a bit of a whistle-stop run through what is people management. The offer I'm making is that there are some models there that you can Google and find a little bit more. I can see on the chat people making exactly the right connections with transactional analysis and parent, adult, child. But very much when you come back to this, it is about simple stop, look, and listen. Slowing yourself down to speed up and allow you to be your best self in that space with other human beings. I'll say one last thing. I'm going to stop presenting just now. The other key thing with people, now this is the key thing. You're not always going to get it right. I don't always get it right. I would pride myself on being a fairly decent people manager, but I make mistakes all the time on a daily basis, because I'm human and other people are human, and no matter how slow I am and how thoughtful I am, I will get things wrong. People in this space, the spaces that we work in, you know, we can trust each other. It's okay to say, you know, you don't get everything right. But we know that we work in some of the best teams in the world. You know, if you think about all those positive words that you said at the start when you're describing, and only when I nudged you did you go into slightly more negative mode. Let's use the fact that we work in these amazing teams and, you know, really support our work and ourselves through that gritty human interaction and being our best self. So thank you very much for your time.